All right, so today we're talking about transhumance and pastoral nomadism. So these are interesting topics. Technically, they aren't types of migration because migration implies a permanent move. But there's still probably a reason why we teach this within the migration unit because there's a lot of elements of movement and interesting um, kind of things related to how and where people move to throughout the world in these topics. So transhumance and pastoral nomadism are really, really close in terms of their definitions and what they mean. So they both have to do with agriculture, and specifically a type of agriculture in which farmers or herders kind of move with their livestock between different points. Transhumance refers to when we have regular movement of pastoralists and their livestock between fixed points. So essentially, they're following sort of seasonal migration patterns based on the climate and the availability of land and basically the food that comes with the land for the animals to exploit seasonally available grazing resources. And pastoral nomadism, slight distinction when livestock are herded in order to find fresh pastures on which to graze. So technically speaking, these are different because pastoral nomadism follows irregular patterns. But I think 99% of the time you'll see these terms used pretty interchangeably. So they both refer to essentially the same type of farming, right? Pastoralists and their livestock kind of moving from place to place. So this, I think, one of the surprising things about this is just how much of the world is still used for pastoral nomadism. And that's not necessarily surprising because this does require a lot of land. But you can see kind of this map and some of the major world regions that are still associated with this. So we see kind of this type of farming in a lot of places that don't have other types of sedentary agriculture, where the land might be more difficult to practice other types of sedentary agriculture. So all of the fives that you see here. So we have Northern Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, and then into the steppes of Asia, up into Mongolia and Western China. And you also have other pockets on Earth where pastoral nomadism is practiced. You have India, you can see a little bit of that, but you also even see individual countries in South America, individual countries within Europe, even still today, that have kind of a tradition or a history of transhumance or pastoral nomadism. So the Sahel is a geographic region we talk a lot about. So the Sahel is essentially the part of Western Africa or Western and Central Africa that is below the Saharan Desert and is oftentimes kind of a really interesting part of the world for a lot of reasons. So politically, a lot of the world's least developed countries kind of fall within this region. You have, as we learned in the last unit, a lot of population growth that's happening. And you have a lot of interesting things as it relates to land use. So one of the reasons for that is because this is a part of the world where you have a lot of transhumance and nomadism taking place still. So you can kind of get a sense within this map just of what regular sort of patterns of movement look like within this region. You see lots of arrows kind of going into different places. Lots of movement taking place. So essentially farmers or pastoralists moving with their livestock to different places based on the kind of seasonality or based on the availability of food for their animals within the region. So oftentimes wealth within this region is often measured by animals for these people that practice this type of agriculture. So this has some interesting effects on a country. And increasingly, we're seeing threats to this type of farming, specifically in the Sahel. So climate change is taking a really big toll and has an interesting and at times pretty tragic effect on kind of the lives of these people and also kind of the individual countries that in which this takes place. So these forms of agriculture rely on a lot of land, but really also pretty delicate ecosystems that are beginning to be transformed by climate change. So you have kind of a series of interconnected issues that are taking place. So because we have temperature rise, you have increased levels of water scarcity and drought, kind of decreased levels of rainfall. What is happening is that the desert is expanding pretty rapidly. So within kind of previously arable land, you have rapid desertification and erosion of soil. Temperatures are rising really, really quickly, which oftentimes has a hugely disastrous effect for the animals itself, and has led to kind of that and the lack of food or the diminishing amount of food has oftentimes can lead to, specifically within droughts, can lead to a lot of death of animals and a lot of a lot of really big issues for pastoral nomadism, or for pastoral nomadists. Nomads, sorry. So just for an example, a 2010 drought in Niger killed 4.8 million cattle, costing the national economy of Niger over $700 million. So thinking about Niger, one of the least developed countries in the world, not a good situation for anyone within that. So you have kind of an increasing amount of these events. And with that, as the land degrades a little bit, and as you have people pushed off the land, you're also beginning to see political conflicts that arise as a result of kind of thinking about what the future of these practices look like. So just for an example, in Nigeria, you have had lots and lots and lots of violence between a group called the Fulani, who are herdsmen, and who are oftentimes kind of roaming around different parts of the country or expanding into different parts of the country. And you've had a ton of conflict between the herdsmen within the country and stationary farmers. And this is actually one of Nigeria's biggest political crises are these kind of series of ongoing wars or attacks between the different groups. So just for an example, over 2,000 people died in 2018 kind of in these conflicts. So you have kind of actual armed conflicts in a lot of the Sahel over land use and what the land is going to be used for. And you also have kind of a more representative, or not representative, but a more symbolic or interesting from the standpoint of nationality and borders. So as pastoral nomads kind of increasingly cross national borders, they oftentimes come into conflict with governments, right? Because governments want hard and set borders often. They want to curb or limit these types of movement. So you have a conflict between sort of the traditional ways in which this agriculture takes place, or the traditional ways in which this movement takes place, and the kind of idea of the modern state with set borders and with the sovereignty to control who enters and leaves their borders. So you do see these conflicts happening as well. All right, bye.